Hi friend, welcome to my channel. Today, we discuss throughout history of the Huns, were a nomadic warrior people who emerged from Central Asia and became a dominant force in Europe during the late 4th and 5th centuries AD. Their exact origins are still debated, but most historians believe they came from the Eurasian steppes, possibly near modern-day Kazakhstan, Mongolia, or northern China. They were expert horsemen, known for their swift cavalry and brutal tactics, which made them one of the most feared groups in the late Roman world. The first significant mention of the Huns in European history comes around 370 AD, when they crossed the Volga River and attacked the Alans, a nomadic tribe in the region. From there, they pushed westward, overwhelming the Gothic tribes, the Ostrogoths and Visigoths, who lived north of the Danube. Their invasion caused a massive domino effect of migration and chaos, as many of these displaced tribes fled into Roman territory, which contributed to the destabilization of the Western Roman Empire. By the early 5th century, the Huns had established a powerful empire stretching from the Ural Mountains to the Danube River. They operated more like a confederation of tribes rather than a unified state, but their dominance was centered around strong leadership, particularly under the reign of Attila the Hun. Attila, who ruled from 430 to 453 AD alongside his brother Bleda at first, and later alone, was the most famous and feared of all Hunnic leaders. He led numerous campaigns against both the Eastern and Western Roman empires, extracting heavy tribute from Constantinople and launching devastating raids across the Balkans, Gaul, modern France, and northern Italy. His invasion of Gaul was halted in 451 AD at the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, also known as the Battle of Chalons, where a coalition of Roman and barbarian forces under the Roman general Flavius Aetius managed to stop the Huns' advance. In 452, Attila invaded Italy, ravaging cities in the north, but was eventually turned back according to legend by a meeting with Pope Leo I, though logistical and disease issues likely played a larger role. Attila died unexpectedly in 453 AD, reportedly from a hemorrhage on his wedding night. His death marked the rapid decline of the Hunnic Empire. Without Attila's leadership, the Huns quickly fell into internal conflict. His sons could not maintain unity and subjected tribes like the Ostrogoths and Gepids revolted. By the end of the 5th century, the Huns had largely vanished as a major power in Europe. Their remnants either merged with other groups or disappeared into the steppes. The Huns left a lasting impact on Europe. Their invasions helped bring about the collapse of the Western Roman Empire and altered the demographic and political map of the continent. They are remembered for their military ferocity, nomadic lifestyle, and the terror they inspired across both barbarian and Roman worlds. Their legacy also lives on in legends, medieval myths, and even modern historical studies, though much about their culture, language, and origins remains mysterious due to the lack of written records from the Huns themselves. The Huns' way of life was centered on mobility, warfare, and tribal alliances. They lived primarily on horseback and were expert archers, using the powerful composite bow weapon that could pierce armor even while being shot from horseback at high speed. This made them incredibly effective in battle, especially in the open terrain of the steppes and European plains. Their tactics included swift raids, ambushes, and psychological warfare, often spreading panic long before their armies arrived. Culturally, the Huns are enigmatic. They left few written records, and most of what we know comes from Roman and Byzantine historians like Ammianus Marcellinus, Priscus, and Jordanes, many of whom viewed them as brutal savages. These accounts describe the Huns as short, broad-shouldered, with flat noses and dark skin, which may have reflected Central Asian or Mongoloid ancestry. However, it's important to recognize that Roman descriptions were often exaggerated to emphasize their barbarism. Their society was tribal, ruled by powerful chiefs who owed allegiance to a supreme leader or Khan. Attila's rise to power marked the peak of Hunnic centralization. He created an empire that extracted tribute from both the Eastern and Western Roman empires, threatening Constantinople and Rome alike. Despite this immense power, The Huns never built permanent cities or a centralized state. They maintained their nomadic traditions and ruled through fear, alliances, and military dominance. The Huns also influenced the migration and development of many other groups. Their invasions pushed Germanic tribes into Roman lands, accelerating the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Visigoths, fleeing the Huns, were granted settlement in Roman territory, an arrangement that eventually led to the sack of Rome in 410 AD. Similarly, the Ostrogoths, Lombards, and Vandals were all displaced or affected by the Hunnic advance, leading to the reshaping of Europe during the migration period circa 300 to 700 AD. Some theories suggest the Huns may have been distantly related to the earlier Xiongnu, a nomadic confederation that threatened China during the Han dynasty. While the exact connection is unproven, it highlights the long-standing pattern of steppe nomads affecting settled civilizations from China to Europe. By the late 5th century, after Attila's death and the failed succession by his sons, the Hunnic Empire disintegrated. Many of their former subjects turned against them. At the Battle of Nidau in 454 AD, a coalition of Germanic tribes led by the Gepids decisively defeated the Huns. From this point on, the Huns lost control over their territories, and their political power collapsed, though their empire was short-lived. The Huns had a profound effect on the history of Europe. They accelerated the fall of Rome, reshaped tribal movements, and demonstrated the devastating power of nomadic warfare. Their legacy lives on in modern language, where Hun was later used as a derogatory term during World War I and in the image of fierce, unstoppable warriors from the East. Yet, beneath the myths and fear, the true story of the Huns is one of mobility, resilience, and the power of the steppe in shaping world history. After their defeat at the Battle of Nidau, the remnants of the Huns scattered across Eastern Europe. Some groups retreated into the steppes beyond the Dniester and Volga rivers, while others were absorbed by the emerging powers of the time such as the Goths, Slavs, Avars, and later, the Bulgars. These successor groups inherited aspects of Hunnic military tactics and political structures, blending them into new identities that would influence the medieval history of Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Some of the later nomadic empires, such as the Avars in the 6th and 7th centuries, claimed descent from the Huns. The Avars established a powerful cognate in the Carpathian Basin, modern-day Hungary, and its surroundings, where the Huns had once dominated. Whether these Avars were truly linked to the Huns or simply adopted their fearsome legacy for political legitimacy is debated by historians, but the connection shows how deeply the Huns had entered the cultural memory of Europe. Interestingly, even centuries later, the memory of the Huns was still used as a tool of propaganda. In medieval Germanic legends, particularly in the Nibelungenlied, Attila appears as Etzel, a powerful king involved in heroic and tragic sagas. These legends romanticized and reshaped the image of the Huns, merging historical terror with mythological grandeur. In the Christian West, however, the Huns were often depicted as a scourge sent by God to punish sinful Rome, a common theme in early medieval theology that viewed invasions as divine retribution. Modern archaeology has unearthed more about Hunnic life. Burial sites in Hungary, Romania, and Ukraine reveal a nomadic culture skilled in metalwork, horse equipment, and military gear. Their elite practiced cranial deformation, a tradition where infant skulls were bound to produce an elongated shape, a feature possibly linked to Central Asian status symbols. They wore elaborately decorated belts, helmets, and weapons, mixing steppe traditions with influences from Roman and Germanic neighbors. Language remains one of the greatest mysteries of the Huns. No complete record of the Hunnic language survives. A handful of names and words have been preserved in Greek and Latin sources, but not enough to definitively classify the language. Scholars have debated whether it was Turkic, Yeniseian, Mongolic, or a now-lost language isolate. The lack of written Hunnic records makes this nearly impossible to confirm. Today, the Huns are remembered not just for their military ferocity, but also for their role as a catalyst in one of the most transformative periods of European history, the migration period. They forced old powers to adapt or collapse, accelerated the fusion of Roman and barbarian cultures, and altered the geopolitical balance of Europe forever. Their rise and fall highlight the fluid nature of history on the Eurasian steppes, where empires could rise swiftly through mobility, fear, and force, only to vanish just as quickly when unity dissolved. The story of the Huns remains a stark reminder of how nomadic societies, often overlooked in favor of empires and civilizations, can shape the fate of entire continents.